Good evening from the State of Kuwait. Welcome to the 7 o'clock news for Thursday, the 1st of January 2015. I am Dalia Badran with the headlines for tonight. His Highness the Emir exchanges congratulatory cables with leaders of the Arab and friendly states on the advent of the new year. Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas signs the Rome Statute in a bid to join the International Criminal Court. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un offers to hold talks at the highest level with South Korea. The crash at New Year's Eve celebrations in Shanghai kills 36 people and injures some 47 others. Hello and welcome. His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Al Ahmad Al Jaber Al Sabah exchanged congratulatory cables with Their Majesties, Highnesses, and the Excellencies leaders of the Arab and friendly countries on the advent of the new year 2015, hoping it would bring peace, stability, and prosperity for all peoples of the world. The Ministry of Interior has launched a comprehensive operation targeting mostly young drivers with reckless attitude who endanger themselves and the general public. The ministry said in a press statement that these young drivers take advantage of distant areas, especially in Wafra, to practice drifting and drag racing, causing noise and creating plumes of smoke. The statement added that up to 33 drivers have been arrested and 44 cars have been confiscated, indicating that many of the cars had their license plates removed to evade the authorities from identifying their owners. The ministry also said the current crackdown has resulted in the discovery of a warehouse used to store car spare parts, urging the families of these young, misguided drivers to be aware of what their children were involved in. After they lost their proposal at the UN Security Council, the Palestinians announced that they signed documents to join the International Criminal Court to pursue war crimes charges against Israel. More with Majd al-Wahidi from Gaza.
In a blog to Israel and its allies, Palestinians announced that they are joining the International Criminal Court to pursue war crimes charges against Israel. In a meeting in Ramallah, President Mahmoud Abbas signed applications for Palestinian membership in 20 international organizations and treaties. Today morning, top diplomat Saeb Erekat handed the signed documents to a United Nations representative.
We will take all the necessary legal steps to accommodate the status of the State of Palestine with the accessions we made this morning. Our message to the United States is that we ask you to rethink your position, to stop treating Israel as a country above the laws of man. And those who want to defeat extremism and terrorism in this region must realize that the prerequisite to this is drying the swamp of the Israeli occupation. Enough is enough. It's been 45 years now since the Israeli occupation began in 1967, and it's time for the State of Palestine on the 1967 lines with East Jerusalem, its capital, to emerge as a full sovereign, independent state.
The decision came a day after a UN Security Council failed to pass a Palestinian resolution that had aimed to set a deadline for Israel to end its occupation. Palestinians perceived their defeat as a push forward joining international organizations, paving way for possible war crimes case against Israel's actions in Gaza and occupied lands.
There's a huge force in our world that insists on defending the Israeli occupation. President Abu Mazen said to the entire world that if his resolution failed, he would join all international organizations to defend Palestinian people and their just rights.
But Israel responded with anger and threats. President Benjamin Netanyahu vowed to take steps and rebuff Abbas' efforts. The US also strongly opposed the move, warning it would be counterproductive.
The Palestinians signed international agreements, but nothing guarantees that these agreements will become effective in the future. Israel and US are doing their best, as they did in the Security Council, to prevent Palestinians from seeking unilateral strategies in dealing with Israel. Majd Haidi, Kuwait TV, Gaza.
Thank you, Majd. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was re-elected head of the Likud party, triggering his move towards winning a fourth term in office in a March general election. Israeli opinion polls put Likud slightly behind Labour, but surveys still give Netanyahu the largest number of potential allies with whom to form a governing coalition, making his re-election seem more likely. Likud officials have not yet formally published the results of Wednesday's primary elections, but Netanyahu's sole contender, former defense minister and lawmaker Danny Danon, conceded defeat soon after balloting ended and pledged his loyalty to Netanyahu. Kurdish forces declared that they have regained control of around 70% of the Syrian town of Kobani near the Turkish border after pushing back the so-called Islamic State group. Backed by US-led airstrikes, Kurdish forces made significant advances after violent clashes with the IS in the south of the town. A monitoring group which gathers its information from sources in Syria said Kurdish fighters now have control in southern and central parts of the town, as well as most of the west in an area stretching up to the border. Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir said elections slated for April must go ahead on schedule to preserve stability despite opposition calls for a delay. Opposition parties are demanding greater political freedoms before the elections for Sudan's presidency and parliament that are set to start on April 13th. However, Bashir said maintaining the integrity and stability of the country requires that the elections take place at their potential time. Bashir renewed his call for the opposition and rebel forces to join the national dialogue process, stressing the seriousness of his government to achieve national unity. Officials said at least 20 people were killed in Afghanistan when a wedding party was hit by a stray rocket. More than 40 others were wounded when the rocket struck a house being used to host the wedding in the southern province of Helmand. Most of the dead and the injured were women and children. The incident happened during fierce fighting between Afghanistan soldiers and Taliban militants. It was the last day of the United States and NATO combat missions in Afghanistan. As of today, the alliance's role will shift to a mainly training and support mission for the Afghan army, which is taking responsibility for the country's security. Indian forces in Kashmir today killed 4 Pakistani troops on the border, ending a year in which hostilities between the two neighbors have escalated. Firing took place on the international border after an Indian soldier was killed in an attack blamed on Pakistan. A ceasefire agreed in 2003 remains in place, but it is often violated. India's Interior Minister today expressed hope that Pakistan will come on track one day. Frontier clashes have intensified in recent months. The dashing hopes that a brief thaw in relations after the Indian Prime Minister was elected in May would lead to a calming of the situation. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un today offered to hold talks at the highest level with South Korea. He said if Pyongyang's conditions were met, he would even be prepared to hold a summit. Meeting with the South Korean president, South Korea said the move was meaningful and talks should include practical and frank discussions on all issues of mutual concern. The South Korean unification minister stated that there is a need for talks between South and North Korea in the near future and urged the North to take concrete steps towards normalization of relations. South Korea already made a proposal to North Korea on the 29th of December to hold a meeting sometime in January to discuss several issues, but North Korea has still not given an answer. Chinese officials said a crash at New Year's Eve celebrations in Shanghai killed 36 people and injured some 47 others. The crash happened in the Sheni Square in Shanghai's historic Bond district, overlooking the Huangpu River. The Shanghai city government said the situation began to deteriorate shortly before midnight and that a working group had been set up to handle the incident. Many of the dead are believed to be students, with 25 of them women. Traffic was resumed today at the site and police turned out in force to keep law and order and protect the people in the area. The bodies of 6 victims of the AirAsia disaster were today transferred to a hospital in Surabaya, Indonesia for identification as search efforts continued. Rescuers said 4 of the bodies arrived today while identification of the other 2 began Wednesday. Police have collected the victims' DNA samples and asked the relatives to help with identification. Poor weather and huge waves today hampered the search and rescue operations for the AirAsia plane. The Indonesia government is trying to position the aircraft's black boxes but does not have a clear timetable. Lithuania became the 19th country to adopt the euro as the clock struck midnight today. The country hopes that membership in the European Union's official currency will bring a rise in investment and trade. Crowds of people turned out for New Year celebrations in the country's capital. While enjoying the fireworks, Lithuanians could also withdraw euros for the first time in the early hours of the day. Euro membership is expected to help Lithuania's economy, even though the currency bloc is struggling to grow. Having the same currency as 18 other richer economies will facilitate commerce and reduce investment risks for foreigners. This is the end of tonight's news. The headlines for tonight were His Highness the Emir exchanges congratulatory cables with leaders of Arab and friendly states on the advent of the new year. Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas signs the Rome Statute in a bid to join the International Criminal Court. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un offers to hold talks at the highest level with South Korea. A crash at New Year's Eve celebrations in Shanghai kills 36 people and injures some 47 others.